How's it going, everybody? It's Krusty Old Crow. I'm back again doing another alternative perspective. This is number, what, 15? And again, it's an alternative perspective, meaning any other line that G.I. Joe classified, that would have been a tactical perspective. And we have been months without new G.I. Joe classified here on the channel. Hopefully that levee will break soon and we'll have a whole bunch to get caught on. But until then, you guys know, I've been collecting some other lines, and predominantly it's been Marvel Legends. So today, for number 15, I'm going to tackle one that I was really excited to get. I'm going to talk about ROM, Spaceknight, something that Marvel reacquired the rights to just a couple of years ago. And now we get that toy form. But I'm going to talk about how satisfying it is to put this guy into my hands once I get him out of the old case here, because of what I missed out on in 1979 when I was a young lad screaming for the new amazing technology that was ROM Spaceknight as he debuted back then. So in typical alternative perspective fashion, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we know about ROM Spaceknight, what Hasbro provides us in this package, of course, this being of the Marvel Legends series, you know, comics line, if you want to call it that, where you saw me recently do Banshee with Giant Size X-Men #1. This one is ROM with his first appearance issue right there. I'm going to have a look at all of the kit that he comes with, do a head-to-toe inspection just like tactical perspective, and give you guys what I think was the character hit percentage that they got with this guy, and what I think the play factor percentage is about that. And then I'll ask, did they meet ROM's potential? That's kind of the gist of where we go. If you've watched this before, you know that's how I get there. And before I do, guys, I'm gonna carry on, show you a couple things we're working on. Obviously, I'm gonna slap them on a new little background I had fun building there for my science fiction and cosmic-y kind of guys. We'll throw them on there, but I was at a thrift store today, you know, picking up little things for this new set that I'm working on, and I'll show you. The pieces of it might be a little bit heavy metal inspired and kind of inspired by what my very first video ever on YouTube was, which was, of course, my fob, my Afghanistan-inspired kind of fob thing that got me started doing custom, you know, just build, playtime, whatever, and toy collecting on YouTube. So I'm kind of revisiting that, and that's going to be my review display, not a shelf display. That's where the reviews will be on from now on, is on this display. I've got a table set aside, so I just thought I'd show you a little sneak peek of that. But also, if you're in Canada right now, and perhaps in the States, if you're going by your Dollar Generals, you know, not Dollar Generals, but Dollarama, these Buzz Lightyear mech turrets are out. I paid $5. I got 2 of these. I could get probably a couple more if I look around. But these are out. These are the articulated turrets, and I was like, huh, that's actually cool enough that a guy can fit Joe characters into it. No problems. Little tight in the headroom, but they get in there and they've got those cool grips. I just wanted to share that with you for you customs guys. But this isn't about sci-fi guns. This is about the sci-fi one. ROM Spaceknight. Guys, let's go have a look at them. So to follow up what we knew about the Spaceknight named ROM from 1979, what Hasbro essentially did was just copy the exact version we had and did very little update it. Here in the package, you can see he comes with a set of extra hands. As always with that line, it's to hold the comic book that they've really designed those hands for it, so he can present his comic. They picture you doing it with everyone in the line. There you have that first appearance of ROM Spaceknight comic book that we talked about. The extra set of hands, and then we have the blast effect, which fits on the 2 separate weapon features, the neutralizer and the analyzer. Now, there's a difference between the two. The neutralizer, which as I understand it's the larger of the 2 weapons, is meant to shoot the dire wraiths, which is his arch enemy essentially, and send them back to limbo. Here we have a quick look at the back of the box. The analyzer, which is the other handheld weapon, is meant to identify these dire wraiths as they pose as other people and beings. Okay, and there you can see we're doing ROM. You can see that it also has a Warlock, Dakin, Iron Man, and
Miles Morales, several other content creators like Same Time Toys and Rowdy Riles have been covering those. Do check out those channels. But with the two weapons also came this blast effect that fixed onto either end, and that got a little confusing. One of my favorite features about this is just how simple they kept it. And at first I looked at the hands, I was like, they didn't really do much with, oh my God, these are sloppy. And then I realized, no, it's Rom's armor. He's got this like this metal, alien metal armor. And so his fingers don't separate. And you see that in the hand features. Everything is smooth, silver. You've got a very good, good figure for posing with the ab crunch and the way that the head is designed. The butterflies are great. The backpack doesn't really get in the way of anything at all. And then the thigh cut, where the boots begin, is where that thigh cut is for the swivel there. But just that beautiful silver reflection, all the original design, right up to the ridging in the helmet. There you can see the neutralizer in his hand with that simple red effect. It's really just 2 to 3 colors at play here. Silver, black, and red, and it works. And there he's analyzing the people in the room as I show you that the balance on this figure is stellar. Everything is perfectly portioned out. You can do a lot with this figure. What a shame Marvel does not include flight stands. Hasbro doesn't include flight stands with these things. And the blast effects for the backpack, it might have been a nice add too. But for what I got, I was pretty happy. There you can really make out where the fingers don't separate on his gripping hands. You can make out the fingertips aren't there, but there's detail in those weapons. There is subtle detail hidden throughout this figure. It's not just a simple mold. They've really nailed some of this stuff that I remember from the comic. And if you take into consideration how this toy last presented itself back in the 70s and 80s, we've come a long way. It would be cool to have an electronic version of this with the eyes lighting up or making sounds, just to really harken back to those days, but nobody remembers it. And instead, what we get is the comic book added to it, which is a nice little feature. The thing is, if you don't remember ROM, you might not like ROM, but I'm going to tell you right now, ROM fits in with your toy shelf anywhere. The more sci-fi you get, the more ROM you need. And I have a soft spot in my heart for ROM and the era in which he lived. I wish I had that original 70s one to go with my Stretch Armstrong and my $6 Million Man, but I didn't. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for talking about the figure and showing you what he looks like. Let's get into that final summary.
Okay, so getting him out of the box, having played around with them, I had to really heat that up. I did have a seized elbow. At first I thought it was fused, but no, it was just very, very tight. But the rest of the joints moved freely. I didn't have to give it that much heat just on the one right arm, whereas it seemed like he had a fuse there, but he was good to go. Here again is that comic, his first appearance. This was back in 79, right? So we tell the tale of G.I. Joe, and we talk about a toy that became a comic book, right? Well, that idea worked a few ways, right? That's exactly how ROM came to be. It was a toy that Parker Brothers made that later became a comic book by Marvel Comics. And Parker Brothers retained the rights over the years. But they made one toy in 1979 of ROM, and it was an electronics-based toy, battery-operated, and featured all the bells and whistles a kid in 1979 or the 80s would ever ask for. And I remember that toy very well because I didn't get it, and I was pretty upset, but it wasn't really available in the areas. It wasn't like my family didn't look. I do remember they did look and tried to get that for Christmas, but he was very sought after and hard to get. You had to go to like Radio Shack or Consumers Distributing. Hard to get. But he was battery operated and had, like I said, lights, and even his gun could light up, and that was amazing. Of course, when they did the comic, he's an alien from a place called Galador. He volunteers to become a space knight. These cybernetic armored hybrid whatever's, this super armor that he wears because he is a space knight. And primarily, while they're like these, novel knights of the galaxy, the Space Knights seem to primarily really be after a race called the Dire Wraiths, right? Throughout
all that time, they constantly did this battle with these shape-shifting, possessive beings, kind of body snatchers, if you would, called the Dire Wraiths. And that's basically was his lore. They didn't go very far with it, but there was the odd crossover with things like the X-Men, where his neutralizer pistol became relevant, and the Dire Wraiths were attacking an X-Men. So like the tech that ROM had eventually fell to Forge at some point, something to that effect. You know, there, and so we had that degree of connection with that, and also there was some degree also through the Dire Wraiths with Transformers and a connection there. So we've got Marvel has gotten the rights back to ROM, since effective as 2023, I believe. And now we've got a Marvel Legends series figure, which, as best as I know, is the first of its kind since 1979. No, it doesn't have the plugins and the bells and the whistles with the batteries and the lights, what have you, the sounds, but you got a really good figure out of it. You got his neutralizer, you got his analyzer, you got a blast effect that fits both. And I laugh because I always thought the analyzer was there to get all the data in the area and teach them languages or whatever it was, or the region, get them all that stuff. And then the neutralizer was the big gun that would send the Dire Wraiths to limbo. It made it look like it was a disintegrator, but it was actually shooting them off to limbo. And I always wondered, was it the same limbo that Ilyana Rasputin ruled over, or was it a different limbo, right? So you get that blast effect that really fits on well with both. So, you know, he's got an enemy he shoots. He's got a question he shoots. Those are your two key features and two key weapons. And of course, you got an extra set of hands with this, which I'll show. And in the videos, pay attention to the fact that the fingers are done this way on purpose, as this is the type of armor he has. It's like a liquid metal over him. So you don't get what you would get with other hands where you can see the finger separation. These are molded much like T-1000 when he's just coming into the shape he's choosing in Terminator, right? Or T-2000, whoever that was, right? But very purposeful. All the details I love about this figure are stemming from the fact that they didn't try to update this guy or modernize or try to reinvent his tech. They went back and said, what worked in 79 for this character must work today. So make it happen, Captain. Let's flex our muscles over reestablishing this strong character. Of course, he also ties in, I believe, with Micronauts and stuff like that. You know, you throw in that cheap, repetitive comic book reuse. Pardon me for the paint on my hands. It didn't get on the comic. But what you get here is something that I would say of all the figures in this particular wave, ROM Spaceknight, I think, is hands down the top dollar value for what you get. You get an awesome character. His head articulation, because he's got that square 80s TV shaped head, you know, it's awesome. You can get this guy into a lot of poses. Throw in a flight stand. I do wish, however, the one thing I would have said is maybe had ports so people could have added blast effects to the rocket pack if they wanted to, you know, but overall, amazing figures. So let's get into giving this thing that grade that I was talking about. On a character grade, I'm going to go with 100%. They gave us everything, especially when you compare it to that 1979 debut of the electronic toy. And if you compare it to all the comic and appearances, there is no other look you want for this than him in his spacesuit. You know, when Parker Brothers owned the rights to the toy and everything like that, and Marvel and Hasbro couldn't get the rights to show him in his armor, but they were working stories where he himself were in them, but not in his armor, I guess, or his Space Knight people were mentioned, but they had different images to them. The Dire Wraith lap over between titles, I don't think is strong enough for there to have been any mention to it, but it is that tie-in that made this guy relevant on my shelf. If I wanted to put him in the background, say behind Storm and Forge, I could justify it being there, but he's going to fit in well with the Cosmic character. So 100% on the character hit. And on the play value hit, you know, I mentioned that maybe we needed blast ports here, but this new blast effect for it, I'm wondering if this was ever considered for a Cyclops. I don't have any Cyclopses right now. I have one on the way to complete my wave there, but let me know if you've seen this blast effect with someone else. But I love that they've made that universal to both, even though I think this one shouldn't be firing blasts, or sorry, not this one, the analyzer, I guess, should be firing blasts. But let me know in the comments why they would both have blasts if you followed ROM a lot. But overall, the play value, I'd say for what you're paying for, it's a standard fig price. This gimmick aside, we'll consider this as free gets as far as value goes. Nice to have nostalgically, but really no function otherwise than just nostalgia. I think you're getting your money's worth, but I wouldn't say it's 100%. I'd say somewhere around the 80%. You know, blast dance, sure, blast effects, other things. Maybe maybe instead of this, you know, we could have gone with glass over red eyes, or just more instead of painted on, you know, little things here and there. But overall, I am so happy with this figure. The paint on this is glorious and simple. All the functionality, right down to the hip swivel, high thigh swivel hidden under the boot. Everything about this brings me back to 1979. So 80% will be good enough on a play value. But did Hasbro achieve this character's potential? Or meet this character's potential? I have to say absolutely. Yes, they did. They killed it. By not looking towards what he could be, but how to make a great figure out of what he is. If that makes sense. That's how you kill that. You accept that in the 80s, in the late 70s, this was the vision of a future spaceman. And it had weight. Kids wanted this. Your market of adult collectors wanted this. I wanted this. I'm happy to have it. Hey guys, that's going to do it for today's alternative perspective number 15 on ROM Spaceknight by Marvel Legends. If you get your chance to have this and you're curious about it, I'm telling you, you're getting a good figure out of this one. That's going to do it for today. Thank you very much. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that like. If you really like it, please subscribe to the channel. I'm doing more like these coming up. I also have a follow-up video I'm going to be working on soon, where I'm just going to talk about some of the other Marvel Legend characters I've been getting on the way. And we're still waiting on some classified. While we do that, maybe we'll talk about some Mythic Legions, Four Horsemen, Cosmic Legions, stuff like that, and more Jada Street Fighter. But until then, I have been Krusty Old Crow. Thank you very much. This has been ROM Spaceknight, and we'll catch you on the next one.